Hey everybody, today Rahdo runs through his top 10 games for 2015. Happy December 25th, everybody! Trying to cover what anybody might be celebrating or up to today because there's all kinds of people watching. I hope whatever it is you get up to, you have a good time, and hopefully you will find this list entertaining and interesting. I certainly am pretty happy with it, although you got to understand this is very, very preliminary. I mean, I'm looking over there. I got a stack of, gosh, I don't know how many games of 2015 games. I mean, I haven't even gone through half of the games I picked up at Essen this year. And I'm confident there are probably some strong contenders over there that might have muscled their way into this list. And Jen and I, we've spent the last couple of weeks playing hard, trying to get through as many potentially strong candidate games as we could, but I know there's still a few I haven't hit on. So please bear in mind, this is very preliminary. All these games are fantastic. I'd be happy to call any of them top 10 of the year. But in the coming months, who knows? Maybe on subsequent plays, they might shift around a little bit. Other games might push their way in. So you can expect a follow-up video to this probably in April. By then, I think I will have hit all the big highlights of the year, and I'll be able to do an update just to see if there's anything that changed. But for now, again, December 25th, this is my current thinking for the top 10 of 2015. So without further ado, let's jump right into it with number 10, Peloponnes, the card game. And really, I don't think it'd be much of a surprise to anybody that this one made the list because Peloponnes itself is in my top 10 games of all time. So really, you bring out, the designer, Bernd Eisenstein, brings out a card game version of the same that really does a great job of capturing a lot of the feel and the rhythm and the structure of its big brother while being in an incredibly tight and portable little package. Well, that's gotta rank pretty, really high. And, this game did not disappoint at all. It really, does what it sets out to do. But it's interesting, it makes a few really significant changes that I wasn't quite expecting that we really enjoyed. Now, I'm not saying this beats regular Peloponnes, but, well, let's see. Probably the biggest thing it does is it gets away from the, you have a big board where you keep track of all your goods. Now all your goods are much more transitory. You have them at the ready when you need them, but you don't stockpile a really, really big cache of stone and lumber and all that. You just have access to stone and lumber when you need it. Almost kind of more like a Seven Wonders kind of approach. And then you have a handful of cards that you use both for bidding. The cards in your hand are your money, but you can also throw them in to supplement if you need additional resources to build something. So I think that's a really, really interesting change. So you go from, having this like really big stockpile and then you empty it all out to build and then you really big, this kind of accordioning thing to, no, I've always got all this stuff. And, it creates a different overall vibe that we really enjoyed. And then the other thing that's really interesting about this game too is the way they changed how disasters work. In the base game and in this game, there's all these potential disasters that can hit you over the course of the game that might make you lose buildings, might make you lose land you've claimed, might make you lose resources, all kinds of stuff. Your population might get decimated by plague, all these sorts of things. Now, in the original game, every single disaster is guaranteed going to hit, and it's just a matter of when they happen, and you try to build up defenses and shore up your defenses before they come. In this game, it's not necessarily the case that every single disaster will hit. There's a lot more variability, a lot more unpredictability with the disasters in this game. But what's interesting is, after the disasters have hit and they have laid your cities low and wiped out your people and whatnot, you have a chance to recover from that. When a disaster wipes out a sizable portion of your population, you can spend some of your resources to save them. Now, and what that means is you basically cover them up. They're no longer available to you for the rest of the game. They don't provide their benefit. But if by the end of the game you have successfully collected enough antidotes that would have protected you from the disaster, but if you didn't quite have all the icons you need to protect yourself from disaster, you can still collect them after the fact to recover from the disaster. And I think that's really brilliant. Something I haven't quite seen in other games. In most of these kind of games, the disaster comes, you try to prepare for it. If you don't quite make it, like say, Stefan Feld's game, In the Year of the Dragon, that's another game that has really strong disaster risk management. After the disaster is done, well, you just pick up the pieces. In this game, you have the chance to post-disaster prevent the impact. And I thought that was really, really cool and created a very, very different vibe. Now, I still think I enjoy regular Peloponnes more because in this game I do kind of miss the sense of, wow, look at all I have accumulated. You know, almost the hoarding pack rat mentality of being able to see all this stuff I've got. In this game, like I said, it has more of a Seven Wonders vibe in that, well, you've just got access to resources when you need them, almost Kanban style. You have them when you need them, and then the rest of the time you don't worry about them. So it's a different vibe. And I gotta say, of course, I love the portability of this. You know, having all of Peloponnes in a game we could take with us anywhere is really, really nice too. And you know, this is definitely one of those games where I need it. We've only played it a couple of times, and I think it might grow on me. I think it might actually rise. I mean, and maybe someday, you know, if it gets enough expansions like its big brother has, it might even eclipse Peloponnes. But of course, Peloponnes has so much variability. You know, Peloponnes got that big box edition that came out recently that, you know, collected all the different expansions and whatnot. So it's still the game to beat. But this little upstart was really fantastic, and Jen and I enjoyed it quite a bit. Number 10, Peloponnes, the card game. Moving on to number 9, Grand Austria Hotel, which I've done a run-through for. I haven't done one for Peloponnes, but I have done a run-through for this, so you can see my final thoughts on that video to get a better idea of why this game jumped out as. But man, this is really fantastic. A very thematically strong, thematically grounded Euro, all about, you know, trying to manage, you know, and create the grandest hotel in Austria by making potential clients happy, taking care of them, getting them into the right rooms. But you have to prepare your rooms first, you know, and you have to target specific clients that when you actually do get them situated in the room of their dreams, that you will get special benefits that help you in the future. You have to keep the emperor happy, or he will strike you down where you stand. There's a lot going on here, and at the center of all of it, this game is a dice drafting game, which I talked about when I did the run-through for this. Man, dice drafting is awesome. It turns out, it's this notion of, at the beginning of a round, you roll a whole bunch of dice, and it becomes this dice pool that players take turns grabbing the dice they need to activate the actions they want. We've seen this in a lot of games, and 2015 might almost be the year of the dice drafter because it's really come into its own as a mechanism to be watched, a mechanism to be counted amongst all the others. And it's fast becoming my favorite mechanism. I loved it in Grand Austria Hotel. It's really, really fun, fast, thematic game. You can see my run through to learn more, but I'm not done talking about dice drafting. We'll come back to that in a little bit. But in the meantime, let's move on to number 8. Queen's Architect from Queen Games. This is another game I've done a run-through for, so you can watch my run-through to learn more, but man, this game, fantastic. After a couple of misses from Queens lately, I was so glad to get this in the mail because it turned out to be you know, a phenomenal game, a very rich, deep workforce simulation game where I'm trying to become, and you are trying to become, the Queen's Architect by managing a group of artisans, you know, blacksmiths and you know, glass blowers and brick masons and all kinds of people who will basically travel around the countryside with you, all these different towns, to pick up and do jobs. And the more jobs we do, the more the Queen is happy with us and will ultimately let us become the Queen's Architect. The interesting thing about this game, though, is the kind of the ragtag motley crew of artisans you assemble for yourself. They're represented by these dials. Let's see, I can actually probably show. You know, they're represented by these little tiles that over time, every time you have them do work, they rotate. And they rotate, you know, at one point they might be willing to do 9 points worth of work and make for a really nice stained glass window or whatever. But then after they've worked, they rotate, and now all of a sudden they're exhausted, and the next job they're going to do is terrible. And so they're not really going to be able to contribute. And the crux of this game is this constantly evolving puzzle as you're trying to work out and get all your team of artisans in simpatico so that they will produce the best works at the right time. And sometimes that means you've got to take them down to the end to let them rest and relax so that they can anti-rotate, so they can rotate in the other direction, so they can get back up to their high points. Or maybe you just fire some of them to replace them with new guys who are rip-roaring ready to go. It's a really clever game, brilliant design, a wonderful, constantly evolving puzzle, and I really, really enjoy it a lot. Another thing I really like about this game, this is one of the few games that I consistently do much better than Jen at. Something about this really, she has a hard time cracking the puzzle of this game, whereas to me it just comes very naturally, and so you know, maybe that's giving me a little bit more bias why it ranks so high, but even putting that aside, very much enjoy. And Jen also really enjoys the Queen's Architect. Number 8. And then moving on to number 7. Oh, what a big, heavy box is the Gallerist. This ginormous, ridiculously oversized box. I mean, it barely fits on the, you know, here we go. It's I mean, here's a standard Ticket to Ride size box. Here's this box. It's crazy huge. I don't know why it's so big, but it's gorgeous. This is the latest from designer Vito Lacerda, who is, for my money, probably the most talented heavy Euro game designer working in the industry right now. He just puts out awesome heavy Euro after Euro after Euro with Vinos and CO2 and Kanban and now Gallerist. This is a phenomenal game. It's all of his games, even though they're very heavy and very crunchy and they have a lot going on and they're really deep, rich economic simulations with a lot of things to keep track of. At the core, they have very, very simple mechanisms, and this game is really simple too. It's a worker placement game where you have one worker. And you have the potential to bump your opponent's workers out of spaces when you're trying to get in. But just from that one little mechanism, there's so much going on as you try to discover struggling artists and get them more popular so that the works they make for you that you hang in your gallery will sell to more and more prestigious clientele. And if you make those clientele happy, they will give you all kinds of bonuses that helps you every step of the way. It's a brilliant game. I'm not sure if it's Vital's best. I think I still probably dig CO2 as my favorite of his games just because of the absolutely brilliant semi-cooperative nature of that game. But man, this game is really great too. Might surpass Kanban. I need to think about that a little bit more, but still an amazing game. And my number 7, the Gallerist. And moving on to number 6. Remember I mentioned a little bit ago dice drafting being a big, big deal. And there were other dice drafting games that came out in addition to Grand Austria Hotel and my number 6, Signorie. Oh man, I had every intention, I'm sorry. After I did the run-through for this and I said how I could not pronounce this, and about 1 million people came out of the woodwork all trying to tell me how to pronounce it, and I had every intention to make sure I pronounced it right, but then I got on the camera this morning and I totally forgot to look them up. I remember somebody saying A, so I think it's Signorie. Signorie. We'll say it's Signorie. Why not? Wonderful game. Another dice drafter like Grand Austria Hotel, and there were some other dice, like I said, Voyages of Marco Polo was another really awesome dice drafter that came out this year. Dice drafting, mark my words, in coming years, it's going to be a pretty big deal. You're going to see more and more games that borrow this. I'm not saying it's going to take off like deck building did. It's not the next deck building mechanism, but it's such a wonderful, solid, deep, and rich gameplay mechanism, provided designers come up with cool ways to do it, and this game certainly does. In this game, there's a pool of dice. We're drafting them, taking turns, and the decision-making comes from we want to draft really, really high-value dice because they'll let us do actions better, the higher value dice. But we want to draft low value dice because if the total number of dice we grab in a given round doesn't, the sum of them doesn't go over 13, we get end of round bonuses. And you can see right from the beginning of the game, all these bonuses that are coming through every single round from the beginning to the end. And so you have a lot of opportunities for advanced planning and trying to decide what dice you should grab to pursue what sort of victory point strategy, because there's several you could pursue in this game. And the other thing that's cool about this game too is it's an engine building game, because over the course of the game you can hire helpers that will be able to trigger off bonus actions in subsequent rounds depending on which dice you grab. So over the course of the game, not only you're always just trying to grab the right dice at the right time to achieve whatever goal you're trying to do while still keeping in mind the in-game bonus that you're trying to get, but you are also trying to build and leverage an engine that will make all your actions more efficient. It's a really, really clever game. There's a lot going on. Very much enjoy it. And another thing interesting as well, from What's Your Game, who generally tend to make really super heavy Euros, like, they're right behind here, like, Zangwo and Madeira, Vinos, Vasco da Gama, Nippon. This one, while it does have a lot of rich depth, it's a lot less complex than what they normally put out, and I really, really appreciate that. I was happy to see this is almost kind of like a midweight Euro instead of their normal heavy Euro, and it works fantastically. Phenomenal game. Number 6, Signorie. Now, moving on to, knocking them all over, number 5. Now, this was a big surprise. We only played this for the first time just a couple of days ago, and I wasn't really expecting it. I figured, it'd be nice, but I did not expect that Jen and I would enjoy it as much as we did. Really kind of blew both of us away. Adventureland. Remember this one, Honey Pie? From designers Kramer and Kiesling, my absolute favorite design duo in the industry. Whenever they get together, they always do good stuff. They also did another game this year that didn't quite make the top 10, which was also very good, Porta Nigra. which was more of their kind of standard, super elegant but middleweight Euro that they're so well known for. This is actually a very lightweight gateway family style game with a really wonderful evocative theme of, basically having a party of adventurers and having them travel all through the countryside to recruit members of their fellowship and to fight evil monsters hidden in the fog and collect treasures and avoid water sprites and all this kind, really kind of very, very thematic, atmospheric stuff, not the normal, dry, trading in the Mediterranean style subject matter they normally hit. So it's really lovely, but at its core, and I haven't done a run-through for this, sorry, so I'll have to talk a little bit more about it. At its core, there's this notion that every time you move one of your adventurers out into the world to try and collect something, your adventurers can only move forward. They can never go backwards. So the farther you move them into the countryside, the more and more potential stuff you leave behind, because once they've gone down a road, they can never turn back. They're always, like I said, moving forward. And so you have a whole bunch of them that you can leverage over the course of the game. And there's a lot of really interesting and tense decision making that goes into this game, depending on whether, okay, well, I could move this guy forward and grab that sword over there in the mountains that would really help me fight that fog monster, but if I do, he's going to have to skip over like 5 spaces, and this is my last guy who's at this part of the board. If he skips over them, I'm potentially going to miss out on a lot of future items. Do I give up that potential future income to grab, the bird in the hand as opposed to the potential 5 that are in the bush? And you're constantly having to weigh these kinds of very, very tough decisions in what is at its heart a very simple, light, fast-playing game. It's interesting, and also, this game comes with 3 different quests, 3 different modes you can play it in. One of them is really super simple. It's definitely one that you could play with kids. It's the family version of the game. But and then there's a medium one that's a little bit of complexity, and then there's the richest one where there's a very big level of complexity because it introduces this kind of area control thing, as not only you're trying to move your people around and get into the right place at the right time, but you also have to make sure they end in one of the cities on the board, and that can be tough too, because you might want them to continue moving farther, deeper into the board, but no, they should stay here so that I can claim this city. And if they get stuck out in the wilderness and when the game end comes, and that can be a little unpredictable, I could lose points for them. I don't know if I'm really doing it justice because I haven't done a run-through for it yet, but I look forward to doing one in the new year because this game really surprised us. We expected it to be good, but we expected Porto Negro was going to be our favorite Kramer Kiesling of the game, but it turned out Adventureland was absolutely phenomenal. We absolutely fell in love with it, and that's why it's in my top 10 of the year at number 5. Adventureland. Now, on to number 4. Isle of Skye. From designer Alexander Pfister and Andreas Pelikan. And, I gotta say, right off the bat, Alexander Pfister, one of the co-designers of this game, man, he has really been tearing it up. He's been working with some really good co-designers. He put out Broom Service, which won the Kennerspiel this year, so that's a really big deal. He put this out working with Andreas, and this made my own personal, Jen's and my personal, number 4. I mean, I'm not saying it's Jen's number 4, but I know she really loved it too. We both instantly fell in love with this game, and you can watch my run-through to find out why. But this is at its heart a tile-laying, kind of Carcassonne style game, but with this really, really brilliant blind bidding mechanism where, oh man, I'm not even going to spend any time describing it. You can watch the run-through, but it's absolutely amazing. And Alexander Pfister has definitely cemented himself as a designer to watch. He works with, he's done really great games by himself, like Mombasa. He's done really great joint games with different designers. And, I'm very much a new overnight fan. And again, not wanting to downplay Andreas Pelikan's contributions to this game as well. I'm sure he also brought a lot to the table, but wow, number 4, Isle of Skye is absolutely phenomenal. Then we move on to number 3, Elysium. Again, I've done a run through for it, so I won't spend much time talking about it. In this game, we are demigods in the Greek pantheon trying to work our way up so we can hobnob with the likes of Zeus and Ares and all that. And we do that by meddling in the affairs of the mortals down there on Earth. And it's a card drafting game, which with some really very tight and very tense decision making you have to go through. And the crux of the game, what makes it really, really tough is you grab a card because it's got some really great effect that you could use. You could ride and build a really nice card combo engine between this and some other cards, and you want to use it, but the card won't score for you until you move it from the mortal realm, because you've made an alliance with some kingdom, or you have whispered in the ear of some ancient Greek hero or something like that. So they're doing they're doing your bidding on Earth, and you're getting a lot of resources and whatnot. But it's not until you bring that card off the mortal plane into the Elysium that you can actually score points for it. And if you don't score points, you're never going to win the game. So you have to sacrifice these great, wonderful superpowers you've got to be able to score points. And the trick of it is knowing how long do I keep them in the mortal realm before I bring them to Elysium and score points. Because this is a game all about timing. It's absolutely brilliant. Well, of course it is. It's the third best game of the year as far as I'm concerned. Elysium. Now, on to number 2, Forge War. From designer Isaac Childress, first-time designer, his first time designing. He kickstarted this himself. I actually did a run-through for it last year. When it was on Kickstarter, I had a prototype of it, and I said last year in 2014 that at that point, I think it was halfway through 2014, it had been the best game I had played thus far. And so I've been waiting patiently to actually get a final commercial copy, because I know a bunch of changes and additions had been made on top of the prototype I'd done, a lot of cleanup and stuff like that. But the one complaint I had when I did the prototype was, as deep and rich and heavy and epic as this game is, it's also crazy long. First time Jen and I played this game, it lasted for over 4 hours. And the thing is, normally that would be a turnoff for us, but this game is so good that we were happy to play the 4 hours, and we almost left saying, hey, we could do another 4 right now. But still, a 4-hour game is not something Jen and I really have the time to do. I always have to play new games. So it was always going to be something that was going to be hard to get to the table. And one of the big things that Isaac had done is he has introduced a few more modes to gameplay because the original prototype I had, you could play the long epic game, which was 3 or 4 hours long, or you could play the fast game that you could get done in an hour, but that it lost so much of the epic feel. Well, Isaac went back and did some more playtesting and came up with fast forward variants, where basically this game at the epic level, the super long game that's going to be 3+ hours, you have to play through 3 full ages. The fast forward lets you skip the first age and introduces a very simple card drafting system that kind of, instead of spending half hour or 45 minutes getting your initial starting heroes and starting quests and starting equipment and all that, you can just draft toward them, and it goes by very quick. And it's fun. Not only has the game been sped up while still holding on to its epic feel, but it introduced a new fun card draft to the game that Jen and I very much enjoyed and worked really well. And then you get to jump right into the second age, and so you can still have the epic feel and scope of the game without the epic length. Really nicely done. As for the game itself, you can go watch my original run-through. The core gameplay hasn't really changed at all. It's a really great mesh of worker placement, where you only get one worker, so it's very tough, tight worker placement. Resource management, because you're collecting all these resources so you can send adventurers out on quests. And these quests, it's not like Lords of Waterdeep where, okay, I got all the people I need, I send them on the quest, boom, it's done, I score. In this game, these quests will last. They're epic in scope, just these little quests, because they take many rounds to complete. And the longer you can go and the further you can keep your adventurers that you've hired and sent out on these quests supported by forging up good weapons for them, the more points you'll score. And then the other element of this game, the third half, or the third leg of the triad of this game, is this brilliant kind of semi-abstract mining game, which I've since learned apparently is kind of based on a popular abstract game called Yinch. It takes these Yinch mechanics, contextualizes them, and gives them thematic grounding, and creates this really awesome puzzle that starts every round off. It's a phenomenal game. Any other year, this would have been my game of the year. It's really that great. Jen and I have had a chance now to play the fast forward variants, and they work really great, and they achieve everything I'd hoped they would. Again, keeping the epic scope while cutting down on the epic length, which is exactly what Jen and I want, which is why Forge War is number 2. But it didn't quite, sorry Isaac, didn't make number 1. You were all, I mean, there was never any doubt. There's no chance, seeing as how it is now effectively my number 1 game of all time. So of course it is my number 1 game of the year, Pandemic Legacy. I'm not really going to spend too terribly much time talking about this. I've already done probably like about an hour and a half worth of final thoughts. Spoiler-free and spoiler-laden, depending on which flavor you prefer. Jen and I both absolutely love this game. It has provided me the best gameplay experience of my life. Hands down, and that's not hyperbole. I've thought about it long and hard. I've gone back to when I was a kid playing Pong with my dad, growing up as a child of video games, everything. Nothing has created as deep, or not deep, as riveting a game and powerful and impactful a game experience as this has for me and Jen. We absolutely loved it. We're actually now playing through it again. We have a second copy of the game. We're playing through with a couple of friends of ours who unfortunately only visit Malta like once every 3 or 4 months. So we're going very slowly through it a second time and enjoying it immensely. But also, we have also continued to enjoy, even though we finished the campaign, the 12 months. It took us 14 sessions to finish the 12 months of this game, and therefore the campaign is over. We have continued to enjoy this because we have a cool custom Pandemic board that is completely compatible with all of our original Pandemic expansions. So we don't use our regular original Pandemic anymore. We use our customized Pandemic Legacy board to play in the lab, on the brink, state of emergency. So, and it's really, when I say Pandemic Legacy is my favorite game of all time, it's not. Pandemic is now my top-rated game of all time, and for all intents and purposes, this game has created a new expansion's worth of content to go alongside On the Brink, In the Lab, State of Emergency, and Legacy. I can now mix and match, the expansion elements of this game, including a customized board that Jen and I built ourselves through our adventures with all these other expansions. And so this game continues to give, it continues to provide fun, great gameplay even after we finish the campaign. And again, the campaign itself, oh my God, second to none, best game experience of my life. So of course, there's no chance that anybody could compete. Pandemic Legacy, #1 of the year. For now, anyway. Oh, no, nothing is going to be able to top Pandemic Legacy. But some of these others might get toppled. So that's why I would suggest you check back in April or maybe May. I'm looking at a lot of games over there. And we'll see if any of these got knocked off the board, if any of these moved up. I mean, I have to admit, I had a really tough time evaluating Grand Austria Hotel versus Signorie because, they're both really awesome dice drafting. But they do it in radically different ways. And upon subsequent plays, maybe things will shift around. Upon subsequent plays, maybe I'll start to appreciate the changes in Peloponnes, the card game, more, and it'll start climbing. God, could it even? No, I don't know. But time will tell. More games will get played. Check back. And in the meantime, if you'd like to hear a little bit more, including some of Jen's picks for the best games of the year, go to podcast.rahdo.com and subscribe. I do a monthly podcast. I'll be doing one probably on the last day of the year. I'll probably be putting my December podcast up on December 31st. That's my plan right now. Actually, is it my plan? Let me double check my little list of things to do, my schedule. Yes, I am planning on putting my next podcast up on December 31st. And I'm going to, in that one, try to catch up with all the top 10 topics that, the top 10 2015, the top 10 civilization game, top 10 surprises, top 10 video games, which I'm also going to be doing in the next few days. So it'll be a whole bunch of top 10 follow-ups where we talk about the games that didn't make the top 10 and why. So if you have any questions about that, what about X and Y and Z? Why didn't that make the top 10 list I just gave you? Ask away. We'll talk about them in the podcast. Jen will join as well to talk about her favorites of the year. And that's about it, folks. So in the meantime, I'm going to say thanks for watching. Once again, have a very, very happy holidays. Merry December 25th. And talk to you later. So long. Bye-bye.